Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing another unpopular opinion with you. So if you enjoy seeing these types of videos, please remember to subscribe and let's get into it. So the unpopular opinion I am sharing with you today is something I'm passionate about, something I've thought a lot about, and it is that kids shouldn't play sports. And everyone's probably like, what? And more that kids shouldn't play sports the way they are playing them nowadays, with all the competitiveness. Like they're on comp teams from a very, very young age, like just all the injuries, everything that can result from these. And I don't think our kids are learning what we think they're learning, or our intentions of putting them in there. I've heard parents say so many different things, and I'm gonna go through some of those things today of why they want them in sports and why they want them doing these things, why they want them to be on really good teams and all these things. And I don't necessarily think that the sports are actually fulfilling those things. I think it's a little bit misleading. And so I would love it if we just returned to rec sports. I know that some people do rec sports. My son played for our city league last year, just played basketball, and it was fun and just simple, simple practices, simple games, and just a good time all around and funny to watch, Most of the parents aren't getting crazy yet. There still are some crazy parents, but not too insane. And good, wholesome fun and activities, I feel like is what I would call like we need a return to. And not just playing all the sports all the time, and especially because everyone else is playing all the sports. So that's what I'm gonna go through today. I'm gonna talk about, hit some of the points that people mention and why I don't think that sports are actually teaching us those things. And yeah, it should be very interesting. It might be a little bit sassy or saucy or whatever, but we're gonna get into it. One other thing I wanna mention before we get started, I know everyone's just dying to see what these points are, is that this whole thought process has been spurred on because of my own sports history. I grew up playing sports. I didn't do anything else, only sports. And that was at a time when sports weren't as big of a thing as they are now. They were still a big thing, but there weren't competition teams really until you were like mid to later teen years, and they weren't even that popular and not many people were doing them. And it was just starting as I got into high school. If you didn't do a comp team, usually you wouldn't make the team the next year for the school. And so that was just starting to pick up a little bit at that point. But I got injuries, and if you've been around my channel recently, you know that I've had to have ankle surgery again. So I had ankle surgery as a teenager, and I've had to have it again for a volleyball injury that I had. And so I just have a lot of thoughts and opinions about sports. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you not to put your kids in sports, and I'm not gonna tell you the opposite either. I might give some strong opinions one way or another, but I just want to kind of enlighten you from my perspective of someone that did grow up playing sports, that has a brother and a sister-in-law that played collegiate sports, that's talked to other people that had played collegiate sports. And I didn't play in college, I chose not to. But from that perspective, that's what I'm coming at this approach, not someone that's not in the sports world at all. Okay, I grew up doing that kind of stuff. I think it's important to be physically active, and I like playing sports. I think it's enjoyable. It's a good way to make friends, but there's also some other things we need to think about. So I just wanted you to have that as kind of a quick background of where I'm coming from as we start this video. All right, so I first have a list of about 6 things of basically why we think sports are good or why we put our kids in sports. And the first one is FOMO, right? Our fear of missing out. We're so worried that our kids won't maybe have friends if they're not in sports activities, that they won't know how to be athletic if they're not in sports activities, which may or may not be true. Some kids just aren't destined to be athletic regardless of how many sports you put them in. And so we just have this fear that we're missing out, especially if we don't put our kids in everything. It's like, oh, this person's playing soccer, so we need to play soccer, and not just rec teams through the city or whatever. They need to be on comp teams in like 2nd grade and do that. And then, oh, they're playing basketball. Okay, we need to do that too. And then they're playing baseball or softball, and we need to do that too. And the list goes on and on and on. or dance or volleyball or whatever it is. And we just keep adding to the list, you know. And sometimes I think our intentions in the beginning aren't to start filling our schedule so jam-packed with stuff, and we might not even realize our schedule's that full because we're changing sports, right? Seasonally or whatever. And so we're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Once this is done, we'll have a little bit more time, but then you start something else. And so we just have this fear that we're missing out on something, or that our kids are gonna miss out on something. And while I think that FOMO is a real fear, you know, of many people, that they just don't want to be forgotten or left out, I think it's become kind of hyperbolic, that it's just over exaggerated so much that we just can't let anything go by without being in it, because everyone's like, wait, you're gonna miss out on this, or your kids are gonna miss out on this. And it's just become such a big thing, where in reality, if our kids are just on a few sports teams, they interact with those few kids, like that's plenty for them. Okay, they can only have so many friendships anyway, and close friends anyway, and they're still getting those interactions, and they're still, you know, getting some exercise, they're learning some teamwork, all these things. So they don't need to be in everything just because you feel that, oh, if I don't put them in this thing, they're gonna miss out on just that one little thing. I don't know what it is, but there's something there they're gonna miss out on. And so just letting ourselves calm down, and it be okay. Like, it's okay if our kids are not in everything, and if we are not at everything, it's okay. The second reason we usually put our kids in sports or think sports will be good is like teamwork and friends, which does happen, right? There are, we can make friends from playing sports, some of them not, you know, like my son on a rec team, you're put together with kids from all over the place. You just you don't know very many of them. You play a little bit and then you're done. Sorry, my printer is like, it's making noise. And then you're done, you know, for the season. You probably just never see each other again, which I know is some like comp teams, they'll put similar people together. And so you might see the same people and make better friends that way, which is why maybe some people like to do comp teams as well. But sometimes, guys, you know, when you think of teamwork and friends, parents can be so incredibly rude, and so can kids at sporting events, like so incredibly rude. And I noticed this when I played sports, but I also reffed and I coached basketball, and man, parents can be mean, and so can kids. And so when we think about teamwork and friends, that's not always what they're learning. They can be learning that. I think if you have an intentional coach, that those things can be taught. Obviously, you can't control what parents are doing as much as you wish you could, but they're not always learning the greatest things. And certain teams, even in high school, you know, they create an environment that's just not super uplifting. And I think we think it is. We're like, oh, it's great. They're making friends. They're learning to work together as a team. And I would be more concerned about exactly what they're learning, what social skills they're learning, because in some of those environments, the people teaching them those social skills aren't so great at the social skills themselves. Like, some of those adults act like toddlers and they just need to go back and take a nap or something, because they're just not very nice half the time. So I think we need to, if we're intentional about it, if we're teaching our kids good social skills, teaching them what good sportsmanship looks like, that's different. But just throwing them in and thinking that's going to be taught by every team they're on, I think that that's false. We're missing it. We think that that's what's happening, but I don't think most of the time that it is. The third reason we put our kids in sports is discipline. You know, I hear people like they learn how to work out and to push their bodies and do all these things, which in some sports that's true, depending on what you're doing and when you're doing it. Whether or not it's always a good thing is also debatable, especially with really young kids, on pushing their bodies so far that they're, you know, affecting them long term. But I think discipline in and of itself is something that is learned best through a home environment. So if that's not happening at home and them teaching, you know, proper ways to take care of your bodies, if you're not going out and being active together as a family and maybe going hiking or going on walks or showing them, seeing you exercise, I think even if they're in sports all the time, they're gonna miss the point. And let me give you an example. So my brother did track in college. He was a high jumper, and he did it for like 3 years and decided that he didn't want to do it anymore. And because they just kind of own your life and it's a little bit miserable, and he was having so much pain in his legs from shin splints and from his shins getting little fractures in them, that he just wanted to be done with that. So he quit track, and I kid you not, he has like not exercised really a day since. He's maybe gone on a few hikes or something, but you know, that was years ago, and he's just doesn't exercise. So if you think that playing sports is gonna teach you discipline long-term in your life to do that, no. It's a combination probably of home environment and personality, because we grew up in the same home and I have more of a drive to exercise and to be more physically fit, whereas my brother just doesn't care that much. But that's his personality as well. So it's a personality trait combined with what is being taught around the home. And if you're not intentional about those things, and if you don't have a coach that's intentional about those things, then they're definitely not gonna be taught discipline and the importance of like building muscle and having cardio workouts and all that kind of stuff. They're not gonna understand why that's important and continue to do it long term. The fourth point kind of falls along with the last one with discipline, and it's healthy eating. I think sometimes we think, oh, they're playing sports and they're staying active that way, so this is gonna just teach them overall health. And I did not learn healthy eating at all from playing sports. Like, the mentality actually was quite harmful and like the opposite, as far as the more you exercise, the more you can just eat whatever you want, which is not a good mentality to have whatsoever. You know, it teaches you to just not be aware of food at all and just kind of like binge basically whatever you want to eat because you just worked out for hours. And again, intentional parenting and intentional coaching can help this situation and make it better in sports. But I think it's so important to teach teenagers and young kids like to fuel their bodies properly. I'm not perfect at this. We have struggles in our home. I have kids that struggle with eating lots, like a variety of food and eating fruits and vegetables. But I think being intentional and showing your kids about it, like teaching them about it. I recently reviewed a book called The Comfort Crisis. And in that it talks about that there's no bad food, okay? There's just different amounts of calories and nutrient value in food, right? And so focusing it on that way, like, oh, if you're gonna eat pizza all day long, this is how much pizza you get, and you don't get anything else because you've already met your caloric intake for the day. So making sure we're just aware of food and teaching our kids to be aware of food, like this is better for fueling your body when you're trying to build muscle and exercise for a really long time. And this is maybe not as good for you. Or, you know, it adds calories, but it's not giving you as much energy, and you'll be hungry sooner and be kind of tired and lethargic while you're still trying to play sports. So this was something I, again, struggled with. I ate so much. My metabolism, especially as a teenager, was so quick. I just was constantly eating, but maybe not with the best things that were fueling my body in the best way. So I think that's something that we need to pay attention to, especially here in America. It's a really big struggle with very intentional eating and understanding like what we're putting into our bodies and just being aware of food. So another reason I hear or think people put their kids in sports is because of the long-term benefits, okay? They're like, okay, well, what if they wanna play in high school? What if they wanna play in college? You know, all these things. So they're like, we gotta get started now, like in second grade. This is kind of similar. I have a whole nother like stuff I could say about this too, about getting our kids to read younger, right? If our kids started reading younger, then they would just fly ahead and they'd be so ready for like college and getting scholarships and all that kind of stuff. Where in reality, most kids that start reading younger hate reading, probably do worse in school. I don't know all the stats with that, but a lot of kids that start reading a little bit later, you know, like between 7, 8, 9 years of age, actually catch right up to kids that started reading younger, and they enjoy reading more most of the time. And so I think we have the same mentality with sports. It's like the younger, the better. You know, if we can get them in competitive sports at a younger age, that will be so much better. But really, it's just putting so much more stress on their bodies. and, you know, on their minds and all those things. And we're not, like, in our heads, we're like, oh, this is preparing them for high school or for college or all these things. And, you know, I didn't even start playing volleyball until I was basically in 9th grade. And we took state my junior and senior year. Yes, my junior and senior year. I didn't play my senior year, but I did my junior year on the varsity team. And I still was able to play pretty well. Like, I wasn't amazing, but I wasn't not amazing either. You know, like I could play and be out there and hold my own with everybody else. And most of us hadn't really started playing volleyball until like 9th, you know, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, some a little bit later. And we all still were playing just fine. And even now I watch people play volleyball and I'm like, oh yeah, that's how well we played at that time. But some of these kids have started way younger. And so it's just harsher on their bodies and all these things. And so I don't think if you want them to, you know, be able to play in high school, they don't need to start playing when they're 2. Okay, they can wait a little while, enjoy their childhood. That's all about, even with the reading thing, right? Reading and the sports, like, let them be a kid and have unstructured playtime just to be able to learn about their environment and enjoy, and not be so stressed out, right? Now they're on these competition teams and it's like so high stakes and so stressful for such young children. And realistically, most of them are not gonna play in college or go on, obviously, to play professional sports. And then most of them might not even want to play in college, yet you're pushing them at such a young age towards that. So letting them just, again, be a child. And if they get to that point and they want to play, then they can work hard and do it. It'll teach them more discipline at that point. But if not, then it's fine. Like, I didn't go on to play in college because I didn't want to. I could have, but I didn't want to. So, you know, and I have a brother and sister-in-law that did play, and they wish they didn't play because it's very overwhelming and it's basically like a full-time job. And so anyways, just, I know that's a lot of people's view, like it's gonna help them get scholarships. It would be more effective for you to help them focus on just doing well in school and being a kid than focus on killing their bodies by playing sports so young. The last reason I think we put our kids in sports is because we think we need to be busy all the time. Okay, so I'm gonna touch on this point and then I have just a few other comments after that, but I feel like we are not good at resting. And so when our schedule has an opening in it, or our child's schedule has an opening in it, we're like, we have to fill it. And if we don't fill it, then our kids are gonna say they're bored, and then we have to figure out what to do with them. You know, and it just goes like, they're so used to having scheduled time that we have to keep them scheduled, and we have to keep ourselves scheduled, or else we feel like we're not being useful, I guess, you know, that we don't feel accomplished. And we need to change that. We need to have a paradigm shift, because we can feel so accomplished during seasons of calm and rest, and we can feel accomplished during busy times too. But it doesn't mean we need to fill our schedule. So we'll see someone else playing a sport and we're like, oh, actually, yeah, we just had an opening in our schedule, so let's just put that into that 30 minutes that we have left in our whole day to do something. And then our schedule is even more busy. So I think we need to be better as a society as a whole at resting, and just, it's okay to take a break, to take a breather, and to let our kids, again, unstructured play, just go have fun. Okay, I'm gonna keep my notes right here so that I make sure I touch on all the points that I wrote down, but I just had a little bit of advice to end this video. If you're still around and you're like, oh my gosh, this person's crazy. But I want you to, when you think about putting your kids into sports and then more sports, consider the long-term effects and the outcomes. Like, what really are your goals? You know, is it health? Is it friendship? Is it teamwork? Is it discipline? And is what you're doing going to achieve that? You know, if you just want them to have fun, then put them in a sport that just lets them have fun, okay? Which I think should be our goal for the most part, especially for young children. Like, you know, once they get into their mid to later teens, okay, they can be a little bit more competitive, but I think for younger kids, like 12 and under, our focus should be on just creating environments where they can have fun, they can still learn, but it's just fun for them. Something else is that it's important for us to remember sports are good and they're harmful, okay? Not one or the other. They're both. They're good and they're harmful. And we don't always get to pick, you know, whether they're gonna be good or harmful and harmful. Because sometimes injuries happen, things happen, and that's just life, and that's the way it goes. Like with me, like I have an injury, but we need to, as a parent, consider that sports can be good for our kids, but they also can have serious long-term effects as well. Because our kids definitely are not thinking about those things. They just don't even have the ability. They're not developmentally able to even do that, to think long-term about those things. So we need to do it for them, okay? We need to look at our kids and be like, okay, what is gonna be the long-term effect of you playing this sport? And I'm not saying like to spend hours and hours and like deep diving into this and stress yourself out thinking about it, but really be intentional with what you're doing. The whole point of this is to be intentional with how we're picking to spend our kids' time, right? Because we are the ones that are picking how their time is spent. Whether we give them a whole bunch of unstructured time where they can just go play, whether we're scheduling every second of their day and they're going from one thing to another and they're never seeing their siblings, they're never seeing their parents, they don't even get to have meals at home. You know, is that your life? Is that how you are scheduling your kids' time? So be careful with how you schedule their time, how you choose to use their time, because it could have serious long-term effects. Okay, so again, just really think about how you're spending the time. That's like the biggest takeaway from this is be intentional with what you're doing in your daily life, and make sure that you allow for that peace, that calm, allow for your child to just be a child, because they will only be one for so long, and just give them those moments to go play and to enjoy their life. All right, so that was another one of my unpopular opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe it was helpful for you. Comment down below and let me know what your opinions are on playing sports, especially nowadays with competitive sports being such a big deal. If you're mean, I will delete your comment. Just FYI, we can all work together and say constructive things in nice, wholesome ways. So yes, leave your comments below. I'm sure it'd be helpful for all of us to hear what you have to say. And remember to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.